So we are going to solve this paper from November 2023, ये आपका most recent paper, and yeah, let's get started. Choose from the list of compounds, just like the usual pattern is. First question has all this list, and you have to pick from here. And again, as I said to you earlier, when they say choose from this, not only will you choose these things, but you will also write them exactly the way they have told you. So no need to like write formulas or anything. जो उन्होंने बोला है वहीं से वैसे ही उठाएंगे उसे. It's a waste gas for digestion in animals. So that is methane. And that's a pretty straightforward thing. Methane. So we'll simply write that here. Turns blue cobalt to chloride pink. This is a test for water. So we have water here. Similarly, reacts with ethene above 100 degrees Celsius to produce ethanol. Ethene is an alkene. If you want to convert it to alcohol, you have to give it water. That's addition reaction. Now, of course, this is steam, but again, at 100 degrees Celsius, yeah, beyond water is steam. Is a product of photosynthesis. There's two products of photosynthesis. One is oxygen, the other is glucose. So we don't have oxygen here, so glucose is the answer. And lastly, contains an anion with a charge of -2. It can be many, but remember, they're not asking you for the anion itself. They're asking you for something that has anion. Okay? So we'll pick something with anion with -2. So that should be magnesium oxide, because magnesium oxide has MgO. Mg is +2, so this will be -2. So magnesium oxide. This question is about metals. Chromium is a transition element. Sodium is an element in group 1. State two physical properties of chromium that are different from those of sodium. Now, one is, of course, that chromium, because it is transition metal, it has stronger metallic bonding, right? So it has higher melting point. Similarly, it has higher density. So both of those are good answers for this one. Because they're saying physical properties. Chemical properties की यहाँ पे बात नहीं की, so color is a chemical property. Next, number of protons, it's always a smaller number with the left side, so 24. And number of neutrons is 53 minus 24. So that will be 29. Yeah. Chromium oxide reacts with carbon and chlorine to produce chromium 3 chloride and carbon monoxide. Construct the symbol equation for this. So we'll start with Cr2O3. Reacts with carbon and chlorine to produce chromium chloride plus carbon monoxide. And now we just have to balance this. Left side where we have 2 chromium, so this is going to be 2. Similarly, I have 3 oxygen, so 3. And let's see, is it balanced? I need 3 carbon to balance this, so 3 of that. Similarly, 3 of chlorine to balance it. And yeah, I think that is balanced. Did they ask us for state symbols? No, so we don't need to mention that.
Sir?
Yeah?
Can we write carbon chloride if that's possible?
Can we write carbon chloride, CCl4? I don't think so, because we have carbon and chlorine. Straightforward उसने हमें दोनों elements का बोला होगा. Complete the diagram to show the electronic configuration of sodium ion. We know sodium ion, because it's an ion, it will have the configuration of the nearest noble gas. Those are the ones we study in O-level. And IGCSE, so sodium, it will lose one electron, so +1, which means K 2 and 8. ये हमारा structure होगा. this shows the observation made when 4 different metals are heated in oxygen. Okay. Lanthanum forms a layer of oxide rapidly, so it's pretty reactive, but does not burn. Mercury does not form a layer on the surface, so it's less reactive. So in दोनों के अंदर mercury is not reacting much, and lanthanum is reacting. Forms a layer of oxide slowly. So far, this is more reactive, this is least reactive, this is in the middle. And lastly, sodium burns rapidly. ये सबसे ज़्यादा इनमें से reactive है, हमें यहाँ पे पता लग रहा है. So rate of reaction can be a good indication of what's more reactive, what's less reactive, and we can put them in an order that way. So clearly, mercury is the least reactive, sodium is the most reactive, then we have lanthanum, and then we have nickel. So I think this is a good order. Aluminum is used in food containers and overhead electric cables. There's obviously 2 different reasons for that. Food containers, because वो corrosion से उसको बचाता है, ठीक है, oxygen को नहीं आने देगा, it will keep the food fresh for longer. And overhead electric cables, because it is lighter, it has low density. Next, they're saying it is resistant to corrosion. Sure, that's also useful. So why is it resistant to corrosion? This is the same reason why aluminum appears to be unreactive in many reactions until the outer layer is gone. And again, the reason is that it has, or it forms a non-porous layer of oxide, which means new oxygen will not be able to react. Okay? And that non-porous layer of oxide is pretty unreactive. So we can say it has a non-porous layer of oxide, and then give the reason why that will not lead to corrosion. We can say that with stops, which is a barrier against oxygen, you can also use the idea of कि सिर्फ ऑक्सीजन के साथ corrosion नहीं होती है, एसिड या वाटर के साथ भी required मतलब हो सकता है. So this will stop all of those. State 2 other reasons why aluminum is used in overhead electric cables. One, we just said that it is low density. But remember, it's an electric cable, so it has to conduct electricity as well. So it has good conductivity. So there you go. A student investigates the reaction of large piece of calcium carbonate, which is a solid, with hydrochloric acid. Hydrochloric acid, सिर्फ नाम से हमें पता लगा है कि this is going to be aqueous. Because if it was not aqueous, then it will be hydrogen chloride. Similarly, water is liquid, and yeah, state symbols are done. Shows the volume of carbon dioxide released as the reaction proceeds. So आप यहाँ से देख सकते हो कि 2 चीजें. One is the rate of reaction, or how soon or slowly the reaction completes. So you can see कि ये यहाँ पे जाके complete हो रहा है. That tells us the rate. Then,
Sir,
yes.
Sir, is hydrogen chloride a gas or a solid?
So hydrogen chloride is a gas at room temperature. But when you dissolve it in water, it makes hydrochloric acid. So over here, this is the amount of volume of carbon dioxide that's produced. That depends on moles. Moles of what? Moles of acid. Moles of the limiting reactant. So यहाँ पे हमारे पास calcium carbonate है और HCl है. But this is in excess, which means the limiting reactant is calcium carbonate. So it's the moles of calcium carbonate that determine how much volume is produced. But it is the rate of reaction because of the temperature, because of the concentration, because of the size of the pieces, because that affects the surface area. And all of those factors tell us whether it does it faster or slower. Use the volume of carbon dioxide released after 40 seconds. So 40 seconds में हम ये ऐसे एक line बना लेंगे, and that is giving us 34. So 34 cm cube is after 40 seconds. The student repeats the experiment using the same mass of smaller pieces. Smaller pieces हैं, higher surface area है, reaction will be faster. Draw a line on the grid, show how the volume changes. Now, have we changed the moles? No. But have we changed the rate of reaction? Yes. So this will most likely take less time. So because it takes less time, still starts at 0 and still ends at this level. So you might want to do this. Sorry, it still should go to 34. There you go. So thoda sa jaldi ho gayi hai. Yep. The diagram repeats the experiment at 20 degrees Celsius. Temperature ab usne, I think, kam kar diya. Yeah. Describe and explain using collision theory how the rate differs. So temperature is lower, so there's lower kinetic energy of particles. अब जो energy ही कम है, so उनकी जो collisions होंगी वो उतनी rapidly नहीं होंगी. इसका मतलब है कि we can say there is lower frequency of successful collisions. Yeah, fewer particles have kinetic energy, activation energy, or energy more than activation energy, so fewer successful collisions. So that's the idea. That this has, first of all, describe कर लेंगे तो हम कह देंगे rate decreases as fewer particles have energy equal or more than activation energy. In fact, instead of saying energy, we should be saying have kinetic energy. Take care. And this doesn't tell us the effect of temperature right away. So I should write as kinetic energy decreases, as fewer particles have less kinetic energy. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. So less frequent successful collision. That's a term that we should use in this question. Okay. The sample of carbon dioxide is put into a gas syringe. The end of the gas syringe is then blocked. Okay. Explain using kinetic particle theory why increasing the pressure decreases the volume. So again, how do you increase the pressure? You increase the pressure when particles collide more. How does that happen for the same particles? Either they get more kinetic energy, which you're not doing it, you're not heating it. तो अगर वो इस container में वही particles हैं, and they have to collide, so instead of coming closer, instead of having more kinetic energy, they must then come closer to collide. So that's the thing. The distance between particles decrease. They come closer. That's the idea. तब जाके वो उसको react करेंगे. And this is Boyle's law. Pressure times volume is a constant. Pressure अगर ज़्यादा करना है तो volume कम करनी पड़ेगी, which means volume depends on the distance between particles. Pressure depends on the collisions between particles and the container. So that is it. Concentrated aqueous magnesium iodide is electrolyzed using graphite electrodes. Unreactive electrodes हैं तो electrolysis का rule number 1 will not apply. And the next rule was less reactive ion discharges. You only have magnesium and iodide, no third ion. So definitely at the anode, we're going to get iodine from iodide. And from the cathode, we're going to get magnesium from magnesium ions.
Sir, but it is an aqueous solution, so won't we get hydrogen?
Oh, wait a minute. It is aqueous. I thought this was molten. You're right. So it's concentrated. So the second rule of electrolysis tells us that the less reactive ion discharges, except if it's a halogen. So let's look at the ions. H plus, magnesium 2 plus, I minus, and OH minus. Because it's concentrated, iodide is going to go, and the less reactive on the left side, hydrogen. So that is the answer. Thank you so much for pointing that out. Okay, so this goes away, we are left with more hydroxide. So reaction is going to become, the container is going to obviously become more alkaline, and we'll end up with magnesium hydroxide. Solid magnesium iodide is electrolyzed using graphite electrodes. ठीक है, molten है, sorry. Construct the ionic half equation for the reaction. A half equation tells us only about one substance for the cation or just the anion. At the anode, the anion is going to go. So I minus changes to I2 plus 2 electron. So yeah, there you go. Cathode हमारे पास magnesium है. So magnesium ions are going to go gain 2 electrons to become magnesium. And that's what we write. The melting point of magnesium is pretty low. So this might be liquid or solid depending on वहाँ पे temperature क्या है. But we don't have the data, so we don't need to put straight symbols anyway. Describe a test for aqueous iodide ions. For any chloride, bromide, iodide, the test is pretty straightforward. You add nitric acid and then silver nitrate. So add HNO3 and HCNO3. With chloride, we get white precipitate of silver chloride. Then we get off-white precipitate for silver bromide. And for iodide, yellow precipitate. So we'll simply say yellow precipitate. And you don't need to identify कि वो किस चीज से होता है, silver iodide होता है, but not required. Iodide ions reduce manganese 4 oxide to Mn2 plus. ठीक है. Explain in terms of movement of electrons how iodide ions act as a reducing agent. Reducing agent क्या होता है? It gives electrons. That's a reducing agent. And you can see over here that iodide had a negative charge, so it had extra electrons. And here it became iodine, lost those electrons. So that's what we'll say. So because they're saying आपने explain करना है in terms of movement. So movement में obviously योगा के इलेक्ट्रॉन जा रहे हैं, लेकिन कहाँ से कहाँ जा रहे हैं, that is also important. So we'll say that iodide ions give electrons or donate electrons to किसको दे रहे हैं वो, this को, Mn in MnO2, क्योंकि वो उसको reduce करें. How do I know? Wait a minute. Is this balanced? Yeah, it is balanced. ठीक है. So यहाँ पे manganese is +4 and over here it is +2. So clearly manganese has gained 2 electrons. State the name of type of reaction that involves simultaneous oxidation and reduction. That is basically redox reaction. Straightforward 1 mark question. Phosphorus iodide is produced when phosphorus reacts with iodine. Okay, so this reaction would be pretty straightforward, like ammonia actually, as far as their bonding is concerned, because phosphorus is going to behave like nitrogen and hydrogen shares 1 electron, so does anything in group 7. So we get phosphorus K 1, 2, and 3 bonds, and that is complete. Now you draw the lone pairs. So phosphorus में 5 होते हैं, उसमें से 3 शेड हो गए. So to left, iodine में 7 होते हैं, उनमें से 1 शेड हो गया. So 6 left. So it's important कि पहले आप bond electrons बनाओ and then आप lone pairs बनाओ. So same for the rest of them. Don't forget to complete it. And yep, there you go. Ammonia और इसमें फर्क क्या है? That the outer electrons also need to be drawn. Hydrogen के पास outer electrons होते ही नहीं है. Figure shows the displayed formula of compound A. Compound A clearly हमें क्या नजर आ रहा है? कार्बन कार्बन डबल बॉन्ड है, unsaturated है, alkene है, can be polymerized, can do all those alkene के reactions. It has alcohol group, ठीक है, तो वो भी यहाँ से हमें नजर आ रहा है, उसकी प्रॉपर्टीज होंगी अल्कोहल वाली. Draw a circle around the functional group that reacts with aqueous bromine. With bromine, and especially aqueous bromine, it's the double bond that reacts. And notice that they have identified it as a functional group. Many students don't treat it that way, but now Cambridge ने आपके सामने उसको कर दिया. So make that distinction in your mind. Describe the color change when excess compound A is added to a few drops of aqueous bromine in test tube. So aqueous bromine is brown. Brown to say use
Red brown?
Red brown is a better answer. Yes. Red brown या orange दोनों लिख सकते हैं. So that's where it starts. Orange or red brown दोनों में से एक आप लिख दीजिएगा. And color after that, it's colorless. Yeah, absolutely. And basically what's happening is the reaction of this with either bromine or OH. दोनों में से कुछ भी हो सकता है. मतलब ये हो सकता है कि दोनों साइड्स पे ब्रोमीन मिल गया हो इसको, या किसी एक साइड पे OH और एक साइड पे Br आ गया हो, but in both cases the double bond will go away. Reduce the molecular formula of compound A. ठीक है, so compound A में हमारे पास क्या है कि you have added aqueous bromine. Aqueous होने की वजह से what's gonna happen? अच्छा नहीं, उसका उसने पूछा नहीं, उसने compound A itself पूछा है. So we have 4 carbon and we're just counting. So there is 8 hydrogens and 1 O, and that's it. Sometimes students like to write OH separately, so they will write C4H7OH. That's also fine, nothing wrong with that. Compound A is a liquid at room temperature. Why? Because it has intermolecular forces, which is relatively strong. Gaseous nahi hai wo. Reduce the motion and separation of particles in a liquid. ठीक है, so motion क्या होता है liquid का? Particles slide over each other. So slide over, or particles are sliding over, and separation, they're pretty close. That's what they are in liquid. They're not far away, they're pretty close, but sliding over. Yes.
Sir, can I say random motion?
Random motion does not tell me how liquid is different from solid or gas. All of them are random. So identifying how liquid is separate from gas, a better way is to identify the particle slide over. Just like in gas, particles are free to move. है random उसमें भी, लेकिन free से हमें पता चल रहा है कि उनकी forces इतनी weak हैं.
Yes.
This shows the structure of compound B. ठीक है, obviously it doesn't have the OH here, just like A did. यहाँ पे OH नहीं है. Compound B is polymerized. Clearly यहाँ पे OH नहीं है, तो polymerization only happens from here, the curve double bond. So draw 2 repeat units. So सबसे पहले हम इसको स्टैंडर्ड फॉर्म में ले आते हैं. हमारे पास स्टैंडर्ड फॉर्म क्या है कि ये, ताकि वो पॉलीमराइज हमें नजर आ सके. So hydrogen. This one is CH3. This one's also CH3. Notice how I did that. I combined everything and wrote it here. Just like this one. What is this? Draw 2 repeat units. How do you make repeat units? RCJ. Remove the double bond. Copy, join. So we'll remove it and then copy it. That's 1 repeat unit. We'll make a copy of that, and then we can join them to find out the repeat units. Okay. Do we need to draw continuation bonds? Yes. Now, do we need to show CH3 as separate? I mean, C with 3 lines? Not necessarily. If you write CH3, that's acceptable. But if you feel like कि नहीं मैंने इसको एक्सपैंड करके लिखना है, तो फिर आप जस्ट बी कंसिस्टेंट। अगर आप एक को एक्सपैंड कर रहे हो तो फिर सबको करो, तो फिर आप सबको ही करेंगे। And obviously the hydrogens are over there.
Sir, brackets
Yes.
necessary?
Not necessarily, because they said repeat unit. So repeat unit हमने बना दी। हमने structure of polymer नहीं बनाना था, हमने सिर्फ repeat unit बनाने थे। लेकिन let's suppose there is a student who writes this, they will get the marks. कोई गलती नहीं है। Describe 2 environmental challenges caused by disposal of plastics. We've been through this. The problem is getting rid of them. We bury them in landfill sites, लेकिन कितनी landfill sites आप fill करेंगे? We burn them, but that causes dangerous chemicals to be released in the environment. And we put them in water, they find their way to oceans में, जैसे great garbage patch है. So that's also a problem. So they fill up landfill sites. ठीक है, they release toxic gases when burnt in air, and they are accumulated in ocean. And that brings us to the end of first section. Does not mean कि अब आप option है या कुछ है, it's just the way the exam was structured, थोड़ा सा वो change हो गया. Doesn't really mean much now. This question is a very common repetitive kind of questions. हमेशा वो reaction change करेगा, question उसके वो ही रहते हैं. Okay, so first of all, forward reaction is endothermic, so backward should be exothermic. ठीक है. Explain in terms of bond making. Bond making, remember, was exothermic. It released energy, and bond breaking was this endothermic, which absorbed energy. Now, overall, this reaction is endothermic, which means the energy absorbed here is more than the energy released here, and that's what we have to identify. First, हम बताएंगे इनमें से exothermic क्या है, endothermic क्या है, and we have been through many questions like this. And then we'll say कि overall कौन ज़्यादा करता है. So we'll say that, so one way to do this would be the energy absorbed in bond breaking is more than energy released in bond making. So not only have we clearly identified the relation between bond making and bond breaking with regards to energy absorbed and energy released, we have also said which one is more so that it becomes endothermic. So this is a model. Answer आप अपने लफ्जों में लिख सकते हो, आप इनको break down कर सकते हो, आप इसके लिए different words use कर सकते हो. It's your choice. The transfer of thermal energy in a chemical reaction is called enthalpy change. Write down the symbol for enthalpy change. That's delta H. And include the sign for endothermic, so that's positive. Carbon monoxide, water, and carbon dioxide are formed during the incomplete combustion. ठीक है. Name one other substance formed during the incomplete combustion. Carbon itself. ठीक है. Carbon. Soot particles जो होते हैं वो होते हैं. Name बोला उसने, तो we don't need to write the formula. State one adverse effect of carbon monoxide. It's toxic. ठीक है. And we have talked about this in detail in the pollutant section. So you can look at that recording if you don't remember that. Hydrogen is used in hydrogen oxygen fuel cell. Describe 2 advantages of hydrogen oxygen fuel cell. So hydrogen oxygen fuel cell has no greenhouse gases that it releases. It releases water. So it's very, very safe for the environment in that case. It does not waste a lot of energy. It basically converts them to ions, or ions के through electrical energy produce करता है. It's very, very efficient. ठीक है. and there's no burning, there's very little loss of energy comparatively. So there's also higher energy density, which means that more energy per unit mass. So energy density is a term that we use for this one. So you can also mention that there is higher energy per unit mass. So all of those are acceptable answers. Question number 7. Dilute HCl reacts with aqueous sodium carbonate. ठीक है, हमें पता है कि HCl is aqueous. Sodium carbonate is also soluble because SNAP. Sodium chloride is soluble as well. So we are getting this soluble, this soluble as salt, and this is soluble. So it's a pretty difficult reaction as far as separating these things is concerned. हमें limiting reaction करना पड़ेगा and titration करना पड़ेगा because SNAP salts है. A student titrates, ये सारी information मिल गई है. Uses methyl orange as indicator. Methyl orange के colors आपको याद होने चाहिए. They go from yellow to pink, yellow in acid, pink or red in base. So you remember the colors. Okay, a volume of 15.5 cm cube HCl reacts exactly with this much mole per dm cube aqueous sodium carbonate. ठीक है. Calculate the concentration of dilute HCl. Now, multiple ways of doing this. The easiest one is titration formula that you simply know CV over N of the first thing is equal to CV over N of the second thing. That's the titration formula. So concentration times volume हम करेंगे इसको. So 20 times 0.25, 0.025 divided by 1, that is equal to concentration times volume, which is 15.5. They are both cm cube, so हमें उसको convert करने की जरूरत नहीं है. But if you want, you can divide by 1000. Doesn't make a difference. Divide by 2. The 2 will multiply over there. So 40 times 0.025 हो जाएगा. And then divide by 15.5, whatever that comes out to be, that's going to be our concentration. अगर आप ये नहीं करना चाहते, then you can always skip it and do it step by step. पहले आप moles निकालोगे sodium carbonate के, ये moles हैं. From this, N equal to CV. So we'll first do that. And then we know the mole ratio is 2 to 1. So we'll use that. Then we'll divide by concentration. Sorry, we'll divide by volume to find the concentration. State the color of methyl orange in alkaline solutions. So you can say pink, you can say red. Both are, sorry, alkaline hai. So this is going to be yellow, not pink. So acid में pink होता है, alkali में yellow होता है. Write the formula for ion present in aqueous solution of alkalis hydroxide. That is the ion that makes them alkaline. Calculate the volume at room temperature and pressure of carbon dioxide produced in cm cube when this one sodium carbonate reacts. So now the limiting reactant is sodium carbonate और उसके mass दे दिया आपको. हमने इसके बहुत से methods पढ़े हैं, 3 methods तो आपको करवाए थे. But the easiest one is first find out the moles of sodium carbonate. So इसका MR चाहिए होगा हमें. So MR is going to be 2 sodium plus carbon plus 3 oxygen. So 2 times 23 plus 12 plus 3 times 16, 46 plus 12, that is 58, 58 plus 48, 106. Okay, now I want to find moles of sodium carbonate. So moles of sodium carbonate are going to be 2.65 mass divided by 106. Let's see. Okay, so that's 0.025 straightforward moles. Once I have moles of this, the limiting reactant, because HCl is an excess, I can just use the mole ratio, 1 to 1 mole ratio. तो अगर 0.025 इसका है तो उसका भी वही है. And then we'll multiply by 24 because 1 mole of this gas takes 24 at room temperature. So 24 times 0.025, that is 0.6 dm cube. लेकिन उसने cm cube मांगा है. So 600 cm cube. So pay attention to the units required. And yeah, there you go. Dilute HCl is a strong acid. Just define the term strong in the phrase strong acid. That simply means it completely ionizes or fully ionizes. In water भी लिख सकते हैं आप, या when dissolved in water, या when in aqueous solution. Oxides of nitrogen contribute to acid rain. Again, we talked about this in detail in the pollutant wali video, so you can look into that. I've uploaded it. इसका नाम है air quality, और जो आपका crash course है उसके अंदर आपको ये मिल जाएगी, YouTube पे भी मिल जाएगी, and also in the recording folder. Oxides of nitrogen contribute to acid rain. State one other adverse effect of oxides of nitrogen. We know that they create smog, and smog को लाहौर वालों से ज़्यादा कौन बेहतर जानता है. So उसमें breathing issues, lung problems, उस सारे कुछ होते हैं. Oxides of nitrogen are removed from car exhaust by catalytic converters, and they convert them to safer gases relatively to nitrogen and carbon dioxide. You just have to make sure that everything is balanced. So I think carbon dioxide दो होंगे. Yep, balanced. The equation for the reaction of carbon monoxide with hydrogen at high temperature in a closed container is shown. For reaction is exothermic, तो ये backward वाला endothermic होगा. Predict and explain the effect on the position of equilibrium when pressure is increased. Pressure affects the gaseous moles. I have 1 plus 2, 3 gaseous moles on the left, 1 on the right. So clearly, when you increase the pressure, equilibrium goes forward to reduce it. So equilibrium goes to the right, okay, where there are fewer gaseous moles. So the word gaseous moles is important, okay? We can explain the effect on position when temperature is increased. So temperature increase कर रहे हो, तो equilibrium will go to the endothermic side, which is the left. So that's what we'll say, that equilibrium shifts or moves left, as that is endothermic. Methanol reacts with ethanoic acid to produce an ester. Ester का नाम क्या होगा? Methyl ethanoate. क्योंकि the branch comes from the alcohol, and the ethanoate part, which has the ester group, comes from ethanoic acid. So पहले हम इसको बना लेते हैं. उसने displayed formula बोला है, यानी कि आपने सारी bonds show करानी. So ethanoic acid में हमारे पास ये होगा ester, and that will be joined with methyl group. So there you go. ठीक है, मैंने इसको थोड़ा सा टेढ़ा करके दिखाया ताकि आपको branch में, which is coming from alcohol, or this part which is coming from the acid, clear नजर आ जाए. Methanol is a member of alkyl homologous series. There are 4 things about homologous series that you should know. They have same functional group, they have same general formula, they differ by CH2, they have trends in chemical property, trends in physical properties and same chemical properties. So इन चारों में से आप कुछ भी लिख सकते हो. Table shows the melting points and relative electrical conductivities of 3 elements. ठीक है. We can see calcium has low melting point compared to carbon. इसका मतलब है कि कैल्शियम में जो बॉन्ड्स हैं या जो intermolecular तो नहीं है, मतलब जो forces of attraction है, they are weaker compared to carbon. Carbon has much stronger, and iodine has much weaker compared to all of them. So this is molecular, this is metallic, and this is giant structure. ये हमें उसकी theory से हमें पता चलता है. But how do you know for sure? From the properties. They both have covalent bonding and they don't have free electrons. So clearly they're both not conducting electricity. But calcium is, because it has free electrons as solid. It's not ions, electrons. Ions conduct when solution या gaseous form में होता है वो, और यहाँ पे ये solid की बात कर रहे हैं. So it's only the electrons that are responsible. So clearly, calcium has free electrons. Okay, the difference in melting point of diamond and iodine. So talk about the forces there. Diamond with giant structure. You need to supply enough energy to break all the bonds that are there. Iodine में intermolecular forces हैं, molecular structure है, उनको तोड़ना आसान है. ठीक है? So that's what we'll say that सबसे पहले हम उसका structure और bonding की बात करते हैं. So carbon has giant structure with many carbon-carbon bonds. ठीक है? And iodine has molecular structure. And then we have to explain about the bonding. So हम बता देंगे that iodine has weaker intermolecular forces of attraction. पूरी बात लिखिएगा एग्जाम में, IMFA नहीं लिखते ना, ठीक है, बस मैंने इलस्ट्रेशन के लिए लिखा है. पूरी बात लिखिएगा, intermolecular force of attraction, ठीक है. And the idea that they are weaker is important. So which break with less energy, yeah, which can break with less energy. All of that is useful. The difference in electrical conductivity of calcium and iodine. The electrical conductivity difference does not come because of the way they're bonded. It comes from availability of free electrons. So we'll say that calcium has free electrons. Ions नहीं लिखना, खाली electrons नहीं लिखना, free की बात है. But iodine does not. And that's it. If you don't want to write free, you can also say C of electron, you can also say moving electron, you can also say mobile electron. Okay, all of that helps out. Moving electron is not really the best option, but the other three ways are. Diamond and graphite are different forms of carbon. The term for this is allotrope. Yes, what was your question?
Sir, can we state that in iodine, all of the electrons are covalently bonded? That is why there are no free electrons, or would it be irrelevant?
देखो, वो electrons कहाँ हैं, वो क्या कर रहे हैं, that's not required. वो free हैं to conduct electricity or not, that is the main point. So आप उसको जैसे भी लिखो, you have to identify if one of them provides electrons for conduction and the other one does not. If your answer conveys that point, doesn't matter how you choose to answer it.
Okay.
Explain in terms of structure why graphite is a lubricant. Okay, so it's a lubricant because it has layers which make it soft, they can slide. वो सारी बात हम यहाँ पे लिख देंगे that it has layers of atom which can slide over each other. Okay. A compound of sodium, iodine, and oxygen contains, ठीक है, percentages मिल गई हैं. Sodium, iodine, oxygen. Remember, this is a compound, so आपने oxygen gas नहीं है, तो उसके अंदर oxygen के atoms हैं. Okay, so we'll divide it by their ARs. 23, 127 if I'm not wrong, and 16. Okay, so does anybody have a calculator? Can you tell me what numbers you get?
And I got 0.5052.
5052?
Yeah, sir.
ठीक है, 505 लिख दो, 3 सेकंड तक. अगला.
Sir, 0.505.
Very good. Next.
And 2,
1.515.
1.515. Okay, so for a straightforward, I will divide by the smallest for the ratios. because empirical formula में आपके पास 2 steps होते हैं. You can clearly see कि यहाँ पे 2 steps क्या हैं. सबसे पहले हमने निकाले moles by dividing by air, and now we're finding mole ratio. That's what we're doing. And the empirical formula always gives you the mole ratio. So it is 1, 1, and 3. So NaIO3. Is this the molecular formula? Maybe, maybe not. How do we know for sure? By knowing the MR. अगर आपको MR पता होगा, then you can find the molecular formula. So sometimes examiner 1 mark का question पूछ लेता है कि what more information you need to find the molecular formula? We need the MR. Okay, and that brings us to the end of this paper. I think it was a pretty straightforward, relatively easy paper. But if you have any questions, let me know.
Sir, is this a general pattern of the paper? Because I sent you my mock and that was very hard.
Yeah, क्योंकि वो मॉक मैंने बनाया था, केम्ब्रिज वालों ने नहीं बनाया था. केम्ब्रिज वाले जो आपका एग्जाम बनाते हैं, it is focused for an average student. If you look at the thresholds, you will see that it's not that difficult to get an A star or A, because the average student scores B or a C. तो जिसने पढ़ा हुआ है, जिसको आता है, जिसको right terminologies use करना आती हैं, वो बड़े अच्छे marks ले सकते हैं. ठीक है?
All
Yeah.
right.
जो मैंने आपको मॉक भेजा था, उसमें तो सारे डिफिकल्ट क्वेश्चंस कंबाइन किए हुए थे. तो इट वाज नॉट फॉर एन एवरेज स्टूडेंट. ये आप जैसे होनहार बच्चों के लिए था.
And
जी,
sir,
somebody
मैंने
else had a
आपको
question.
अभी अपना recent mock पे भेजा, उस पे please feedback दे दें मुझे.
Yeah, I will. Did somebody else have a
Excuse
question?
me, sir? Yeah,
Yeah.
I did. Actually, when you're solving papers, what do you think? How much marks should you be getting at least for now? Like, are you
देखिए,
supposed to get
I
like
don't know
40
about
marks
at
per paper?
least. I don't know about at least, लेकिन general rule of thumb 35 for paper जो MCQs वाला है out of 40. ठीक है? That is something you should try to get. 60 for paper 2. That is something you should try to get. And in paper 4, again 32 या ज्यादा. ये मार्क्स जो हैं, ये आपको कोशिश करनी है कि आपके पास ये तो जरूर आए. इनमें सबसे मुश्किल है ये वाला, because MCQs are generally difficult and obviously उसमें risk ज्यादा होता है. So इसलिए you need to do extensive practice to basically fix this. Or if you want more specific numbers for any particular paper, then always look at the threshold of the examiner to figure that out.
Right. Okay.
All right. So I'll see you in the next class tomorrow. Take care. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.